How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Infinite Sports. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, to recap Super Bowl 60 as the Seattle Seahawks defeat the New England Patriots 29-13 and capture their second Super Bowl championship, the first championship since, Super Bowl 48 was their first championship against the Broncos when they won 43-8, and they avenged their Super Bowl 49 loss to the Patriots. Obviously, completely different teams than the last time they matched up against each other. And it was definitely not as much of a classic, nowhere near a classic, as that Super Bowl. A lot of people were down on it because, from a pure entertainment standpoint, yes, it was not a very entertaining Super Bowl. Now, I think a lot of people went a little too crazy with some of the reactions, saying, oh, how did these teams even make it to the Super Bowl? Were you not watching the game? You had two very good defenses going at it. Now, one defense got the turnovers they needed, was pretty much perfect through the whole game. It kind of leaked towards the end there, but again, the game was out of reach at that point. But still, Seattle's defense showed up. Patriots' defense showed up too. It's just they didn't get the turnovers. There were a couple of opportunities where, Sam Darnold maybe threw it right to him and they had an opportunity to make a play and maybe, change the course of the game, but it didn't happen. Seattle's defense was great from start to finish. Patriots scored all their points in the fourth quarter. Sam Darnold and the offense did what they had to do. They led scoring drives. I mean, it was basically all field goals. And the first touchdown of the game happened in the fourth quarter off of a turnover. Sam Darnold connected with A.J. Barner for a touchdown, and then they had another touchdown later, which was a pick six. But other than that, Seattle's offense really didn't have to do too much because Drake Maye and the Patriots' offense just was out of sync all game long. The Seahawks just brought pressure all game long. Drake Maye just really didn't have any answers for it, had to use his legs at times, but he just was out of sync, and he really didn't have a good postseason. Did not have a good postseason. The Patriots made it to the Super Bowl in spite of Drake Maye. Sam Darnold, looking at the other side, he was perfect. Didn't turn the ball over at all the entire playoffs. And that was the difference. Now, the other thing, too, offensive line. I said going into this game, the outcome of this game was going to be determined by the turnovers and the battles in the trenches. And the Patriots' offensive line just could not protect Drake Maye. And then even when they brought those corner blitzes, they had no answers for that either. And resulted in turnovers. Drake Maye took a lot of sacks. It was sacked a lot in these playoffs. I think he was tied or maybe eclipsed Joe Burrow for the most sacks in a single postseason. Because remember in that divisional game against the Titans, Joe Burrow, wasn't he sacked like 7 times? Five to 7 times. I forget what the number was. But still, he was sacked a bunch of times. And Drake Maye matched that, and I believe eclipsed it with the punishment that he took in these playoffs. And that's something that the Patriots are going to have to address in the offseason. Will Campbell, their left tackle, received a lot of criticism. There's been calls for maybe him being moved, changing positions because of his size. He was overwhelmed. And it shows how much depth Seattle has on that defensive line because there's just so many different guys getting after Drake Maye. This defense was great all year long. And, that combined with Sam Darnold in large part is why they got to this point and why they're Super Bowl champions. And now they have their second Super Bowl in franchise history. But, yeah, I mean, again, from a pure entertainment standpoint, was not the most exciting Super Bowl. It's going to be one of those that you kind of just forget about. But that does not mean that these teams didn't deserve to make it to the game just because your expectations weren't met. Okay? You had two good defenses going at it. Simple as that. And Sam Darnold said it after the game. Seattle's offense, they didn't play their best game, but you could tell that the game plan was, all right, our defense is playing lights out right now. We just cannot make any mistakes. So that brings Kenneth Walker into the discussion, and he ended up winning Super Bowl MVP. He had 27 carries for 135 yards, also caught 2 passes for 26 yards in the receiving game. Could have really put a stamp on his Super Bowl MVP had he had that rushing touchdown that got called back because of a holding. But he was great for the Seahawks through this entire playoff run. Wasn't didn't have a spectacular regular season, but when they really needed him in these playoffs, and especially when Zach Charbonnet went down with the torn ACL, he really had to have a great performance in the Super Bowl, and that's what he did. I mean, he showed once again he's very hard to tackle. Guys were again juking out guys and just very elusive, very patient. Hits the hole, and again, could have had that rushing touchdown if it wasn't for a holding call. So his numbers could have been even better. But Seattle proved that they were the better team here, and we knew this going in. This was, you looked at these two teams and you matched up the two rosters. Seattle was the better team. But I kept saying, look, New England's getting heavily disrespected. Josh McDaniels has been in these games before. They're going to come up with the game plan. They got 2 weeks. It's going to be it could be a close game, and it was for a little bit. But New England's offense just couldn't generate anything. I mean, on their opening drive, Seattle got the ball to start the game. They put up 3 points, obviously, but New England's first drive looked encouraging, and then Drake Maye took a sack, and then after that, they just could not get anything going until the fourth quarter. 3 plays, and you had that touchdown to Mac Hollins that made it 19-7, and you thought, okay, let's see what happens. And then they get a stop, and then they're moving the ball, but then Drake Maye, a little too aggressive, throws a pick, gets underthrown, and it's intercepted by Julian Love. Going back the other way, that resulted in points there. And Chris Collinsworth even said it. That wasn't. He had 8. I think there was 8 minutes left in the game. You didn't really have to be that aggressive there. There was still a lot of time. Like, had you gone down the field and scored a touchdown there, you got all 3 timeouts left. It's a 5-point game. Your defense gets another stop. All of a sudden, hey, you go down the field and score a touchdown, you take the lead. And we've seen the Patriots have epic comebacks in the Super Bowl before. But not on this night. Not on this night. It never seemed like that was going to happen. I mean, there were 30 points scored in the fourth quarter, so we got a bunch of scoring there, because most of it was just field goals coming from Seattle. And I thought for a moment Jason Myers was maybe going to win Super Bowl MVP with all the field goals that he was kicking, but it ended up being Kenneth Walker, and rightfully deserved. You could have gave the MVP to the entire defense because of how they played, and this game could have been, even more of a blowout because there were some missed opportunities on some deep balls. Darnold overthrew Rashid Shaheed later in the game. Earlier in the game, there was the one to Smith and Jigba, and he was completely behind the defense. I mean, he catches that, he's taking that to the house. And again, that goes back to Darnold saying that, they didn't play their best game, but they didn't have to on this night. And Sam Darnold, look, he played his best game in the NFC Championship game, so the defense, returned the favor because they didn't play their best game in the NFC Championship game. They did not, but they played very well on Sunday, shutting down the Patriots offense. And yeah, you look at, the teams that the Seahawks had to go through, right, to get here. They went up against the 49ers and the Rams, 2 division rivals, and you look at their offenses. The 49ers have Christian McCaffrey, all right? That's someone that you have to key in on and you got to take out of the game. Now, obviously, Seattle, was off and running in that game with the Rashid Shaheed kick return, and it was a blowout from the beginning. But that's someone you got to key in on. And then with the Rams, they had to deal with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams, all these guys. But you look at the Patriots offense, right? And look, Drake Maye had a great season, was the runner-up for MVP behind Matthew Stafford, had a great year. And the guys that he has at his disposal, they got some pretty good players on offense. But is there an elite level player on this offense? Like with the Seahawks, they got Jackson Smith and Jigba. And Kenneth Walker, he played like an elite player in the postseason. Who on the Patriots did the Seahawks really have to take out of the game? No, you just line up, you play man coverage. They're great against the run. All right, Drake Maye, try to beat us. Couldn't. Now, again, the offensive line was an issue as well, but yeah, I mean, the Seahawks, they got to play their game. They really, there was no one that they really had to focus on and say, we got to make sure we take this guy out of the game. We cannot let this guy beat us. So that's something else. Like, look, the Patriots, you got Stephon Diggs, but he's not, the Stephon Diggs from his days with the Bills and the Vikings. Had a very good year. Coming off of an injury, the ACL had a productive year with the Patriots. And some of the other receivers, made plays for them this year, but they're not elite level receivers. And the running game was very good at times. Ramondre Stevenson, after his fumbling issues, really, came into his own. And Travion Henderson, with some of the big plays that he had over his rookie season, but really was a no-show in these playoffs. And obviously you have Hunter Henry as well, who got, took a big hit early on in the game. But yeah, they need more offensive talent there, So going into the offseason, Patriots are going to have to, maybe get Drake Maye another receiver, and obviously, get better protection as well for him, because that showed in this game, especially going up against this defensive front. And it's not like, it was all, corner blitzes and, bringing an extra man. Like, they were getting home on just 4-man rushes. Which again is a credit to Seattle's defense and how good it is, but also they were going up against an offensive line that's not that great. So, yeah, again, it just comes down to this, everybody. The better team won, and, congratulations to the Seahawks on a great season. Again, this was a team I didn't have making the postseason. I didn't expect them to play up to this potential here. Sam Darnold, I did say he was a bit of an upgrade over Geno Smith. Turned out to be a massive upgrade. And look at Geno Smith, could be on his way out of Vegas now. The Raiders are going to have the number 1 overall pick, and the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. Think about that. Geno Smith was on that team last year, and they won 10 games, and then he goes to the Raiders. Sam Darnold goes to the Seahawks, and look at where those two teams are right now. And now Clint Kubiak is going to be the head coach of the Raiders. So you're going to have him with potentially a Fernando Mendoza. So that's going to be the situation over in Vegas. But yeah, look, I had Sam Darnold as an upgrade over Geno Smith, but I didn't know how he was going to fit into the Seahawks offense, because of the changes they made and, the elevations now, Smith and Jigba becoming that number 1 wide receiver. Well, he's a number 1 wide receiver, one of the best receivers in the NFL after this year. The running game, I think, wasn't as good as it could have been in the regular season, but obviously we get to the postseason, it's completely different. Kenneth Walker, great postseason, Super Bowl MVP. But the defense, I mean, they were the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. And that showed once again with the pick 6 late. It's a very good defense. And that's how they won Super Bowl 48. Great defense. Had a defensive touchdown off of Peyton Manning. Had 3 or 4 turnovers in that game. I think it was 4. Here was the same thing. Drake Maye, 2 picks, and a fumble. Can't do that. I said that if you're turning the ball over, Seattle's going to be a team that makes you pay. And they made the Patriots pay all right in more ways than one. And for the Patriots, look, It's not going to be easy to get back here. You might not get back here. Now, history shows, that could be different because they're a team that's made it to the Super Bowl plenty of times and has won a lot of championships. But it's a new era now. Mike Vrabel deserved Coach of the Year. I know I said Kyle Shanahan, but Mike Vrabel, great choice as well. Especially what the Patriots have looked like the last couple of years. There's a lot of people that are down on the Patriots with this kind of performance, and especially the schedule that they were dealt this year and the opponents that they went up against. And I understand that. And they're going to have a first place schedule next year. So it's going to be tough. But you can't blame them for what they were dealt. And they went up against some very good defenses in the postseason. And they won those games. And they got to the Super Bowl. Now, if Bo Nix was healthy, I think we all believe the Broncos would have beat the Patriots, and then we would have had a completely different Super Bowl. But that didn't happen. So, there's improvements that need to be made. And, Patriots could be a playoff team next year. I don't know if they're going to get back to the Super Bowl, but they could definitely be a playoff team next year. And I know some personalities on television are already, coming out with rankings and saying, that they're not even a top, 6, 7, or 8 team in the AFC. And they're naming teams that the Patriots beat this year. They're naming teams that right now the Patriots are better than them. And the Patriots just made it to the Super Bowl, where some of these teams haven't been to a Super Bowl in years. And it's the teams with the quarterbacks that we're always talking about, how great they are, but they can't get to the big game. Drake Maye and the Patriots. With Mike Vrabel, first year as head coach of this team. With Drake Maye, second year as a starting quarterback. They made it to the Super Bowl. Where we're talking about all these other guys, they haven't been there. Well, one of them has been to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow has been to a Super Bowl. But that was years ago. And since then, the team has gotten worse. And then we're always talking about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen every year. But they haven't gone to a Super Bowl either. Neither of them have. So, you'd keep saying, oh, yeah, the Bills, the Ravens. Oh, they're going to have to show it. Now, they're both going to have new head coaches going into next year. So, we'll see if that makes a difference. But right now, you got to see it to believe it. Got to see it to believe it. And look, again, this is a New York guy kind of defending the Patriots here. But look, the Patriots made it to the Super Bowl. All right? So, yeah, it wasn't a great performance, but yeah, they ran into a good team. They ran into a quarterback that had not turned the ball over the entire postseason and ended the postseason without a turnover. Give Sam Darnold credit, man. That journey that he's been on, 2018, gets drafted by the Jets, ends up getting traded a few years later to the Panthers. Then he's backing up Brock Purdy. Then he's with the Vikings. Doesn't play well the final 2 games. They let him go. Seattle picks him up. And he's a Super Bowl champ. How do you think the Vikings feel? I mean, they look worse and worse. And now, I mean, he just won the Super Bowl. He's with Kenneth Walker riding the teacups in Disneyland. You're going to thought, man, that could have been Darnold and Justin Jefferson. That could have been us. It's not. Because you decided to go with a project that was not ready. Still needed some time to marinate a bit with the roster that's ready to compete for a championship. And now who knows what's going to happen. Now they're looking to bring in a veteran quarterback. We talked about that. But they kind of just wasted a year. Whereas, you bring Darnold back for another year, you let McCarthy sit behind him, and you go from there. But you give it another chance, but they didn't do that. And look, I will come to the defense of the Vikings and say, you commit to Darnold on a multi-year deal, then all of a sudden it's like you have JJ McCarthy sitting there, but you could have supposedly he could have been traded. So yeah, you could have did that. But they needed a better plan, and I mean they go with Carson Wentz, and Wentz just at this point he's a backup quarterback. That's what he is, and that's what he's brought in to be. But then was asked to be a starter when McCarthy went down, and yeah, it didn't go so well, and Wentz ended up getting hurt. But yeah, the Vikings, it looks really bad right now after what happened with the Seahawks now winning the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the Jets should get killed because Sam Darnold and the Jets was never going to work. The Jets failed to build the team around him. Now, had they been able to do that, well, then maybe he would have had some success. But it wasn't going to work. And look at all the teams that he's been on since then. Like, I mean, obviously because a lot of people like to pile on with the Jets, so you obviously are going to do that. But he hasn't been on the Jets since 2020. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. But yeah, I mean, what a story. Him being a Super Bowl champ now. I mean, look, again, there was still some doubt with him coming from my way because now now you're playing in the Super Bowl. All right, are you going to be able to keep your nerves in check? Are you going to, be able to play the football that you've been playing and be perfect? Now, he wasn't perfect, but he didn't turn the ball over. He didn't have to be perfect. I think that's what I was trying to get at. Not turn the ball over. Not force things. And once you kind of saw how the game was going, you just let the running game do its thing. You just let the defense do their thing. Jason Myers did his thing. And that's it. I mean, once the game got to 9-0, a two-score game, I mean, it was insurmountable. Because the Patriots just could not do anything. Like I said, after the opening drive, they could not generate any kind of offense. They had a little bit in the fourth quarter. But when the Seahawks needed to make a play, they made a play and shut it down. And that's that. And that's that. So now the NFL season's over. That's it. There's the draft, there's free agency, combine, all those things, and keep you updated. There was a lot of reports coming out prior to the game about certain topics. Obviously Aaron Rodgers is a big topic on this show. Could be possible that he comes back. Looking likely that he could be coming back now. With the team advocating for his return and the multiple conversations that he's had with Mike McCarthy. So we'll keep an eye on that. Also, potential rule changes with the onside kick. That maybe they do away with the onside kick and they change it to a 4th and 13. Rather than going for an onside kick, you send your offense back out there on a 4th and 13 from I don't know what yard line. Obviously on your own yard, in your own territory. And you go for it. And if you convert, then you keep going. I'm actually not opposed to that. Because there's more of a chance of you converting on that, obviously, than an onside kick. But then again, you're also doing away with the onside kick, and I know on the broadcast they were talking about, the iconic onside kick in the Super Bowl with the Saints and the Colts. Sean Payton electing to go for an onside kick and steal a possession to start the second half, steal a possession away from the Colts. that made a difference in the game. So there is that, but I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it. Trying to think of anything else left with the Super Bowl here that we didn't cover. I mean, you know, like I said, it's not going to be a classic that you remember, but I'm not going to sit up here and say, oh man, both of these teams, how did they even get here? Like I know that some conversations in my group chats. Oh, how did these teams even make it? I mean, the Super Bowl's intense, and the two quarterbacks, are going up against some good defenses, and you know, it was a struggle, more so for Drake Maye. Um, I'm not really surprised by how the game went. I'm not. Now, I thought it was going to be a little bit closer, but I'm not surprised by it because Seattle's defense has been good all year. And their front four going up against that offensive line, it was a mismatch. And it led to turnovers, and that's why we got the score that we had. So, but yeah, Seattle did not expect it. You know, both teams did not expect them to get this far this year. Thought they were maybe still a year away. Well, the Patriots really a year away from the playoffs, but they both exceeded expectations, and Seattle's a champion. And Mike McDonald, what a job he's done in a short amount of time that he's been the head coach, and they got their quarterback. They got their franchise quarterback. And you know what? It's one of those things where it's not about how you start. Now, Sam Darnold's not finished yet, but Sam Darnold has revitalized his career. And whatever happens from here on out, he's a Super Bowl champ. His legacy, how it's shaped right now, is cemented from that Super Bowl. If he ends up, regressing and not being great after this, you got that. You went on this heck of a journey, going from place to place, team to team, and then you end up being a champion after many people doubted you. So I don't think that's going to happen. He's a completely different dude now. The moment didn't faze him. Again, I mean, played perfect in the playoffs when it came to the turnovers. Did not turn the ball over. The stage was not too big for him, and he shined, and he's a champion, and no one can take that away from him. And the Seahawks team's not going anywhere. They're going to continue to add. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have the same exact roster. There are going to be some guys that leave and go get paid somewhere else. You're not going to be able to keep everybody, but you got to, John Schneider, who, right, won Executive of the Year. He could build a good roster. And, guys that leave can replace him. Now, there's some that you don't want to leave. You don't want them to go, like, Smith and Jigba, some of the guys obviously on defense, but Seattle just really reload, and they're going to be a problem. So for the other teams in the division, the Rams obviously, got some things they got to correct, and the 49ers got to reload. And then there's the Cardinals. Sorry, I don't really know what direction they're going in, particularly at quarterback. We got to see if Kyler Murray gets traded this offseason, which I think is a possibility. So there's going to be a reset there. But, Seattle's going to be a problem. And I'm not going to get into the whole dynasty thing because even last year, the Eagles, I mean, they were great. They could be the next dynasty. Well, look what happened this year. And now they could be without possibly Landon Dickerson, because I saw on NBC Sports had an article. Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson could both retire with the offensive line coach retiring. That's a problem. And then if A.J. Brown leaves, That's a problem. That's a problem for the Eagles. But I don't. I'm not going to bring the dynasty talk into this discussion. I think what you're seeing in the NFL now is parity, and we need more of that because it keeps you interested. Like no more every year the Chiefs are going to make it, and I saw CBS's power rankings post Super Bowl. They had the Chiefs, I think, at 25, one spot ahead of the Giants. Really, the Chiefs are the 25th best team in the NFL. Now, they got some issues with their cap space that they're going to have to figure out, which they will. But I just thought that was interesting. Really, that low? But yeah, it's something else to bring up too. But yeah, it's parity, man. I mean, it's a great thing. That's how it should be. You know, don't need to be seeing the same teams in it every single year. Um, but yeah, you know, that's it. You know, that's it for the NFL season. Seahawks win their second championship. Kenneth Walker. Hey, it's about time a Kenneth won Super Bowl MVP. You know, it's about time. Um, but yeah, you know, it was a great season. It's unfortunate it's over, but hey, it's baseball season. Baseball season's coming up. Spring training begins next week. Spring training games next week, I believe. And be doing Yankee recaps almost after every game. After almost every game. So it's exciting times coming up. And NBA playoffs coming up in a couple months or a few months. So I know we haven't really been focusing on that, but I'll try to, get into that more as well as the postseason years there. But NFL season, to put a bow on it, it was a great year. And obviously things come out, rumors and things like that. We will talk about it. Also, I do want to bring up the halftime show because I know that's been a huge topic of discussion. Here's my take, okay? I did throw on the alternate halftime show on my phone just to take a peek as to what it was all about. But I did have it on. We had it on in my basement. I had family over, so my cousins and I were watching it. This is really my take on it, everybody. If you're not a fan of who's performing, okay, you could just turn it off. All right? You don't need to tweet about it. You don't need to post anything about it. You could just turn it off and just bridge the gap between halftime and the second half. Throw on an episode of, I don't know, an episode of SpongeBob or Friends or something. Just throw something on that's like 10, 11, 12, 10 to 20 minutes, right? Just put something else on. See if a movie's on, something. You can just watch that. Or just turn the TV off. You know what? If you're at a party and most people don't want to watch the halftime show, you could turn it off. And you know what you could do? You could talk. Talk about the first half. Talk about how you have to go to work tomorrow. You don't have to. We don't have to go crazy over it. We don't. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, yeah, was I a huge fan of Bad Bunny? To be honest, really haven't listened to any of his music. Okay, now actually, some of his songs I did recognize because, in college when I went out, these would be the songs that would play at the at the clubs and the bars that we would go to, on the rare occasions that I would go out. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't care. I'm a football fan. I'm just there to watch the game. All right, and just spend time with people, eat food. That's it. I really don't. At this point, I really don't care. So I hope that's a lesson for people. Just next year, whoever it is, I don't even know. Did they announce who's in the halftime show next year? Whatever. Whoever it is, if you don't like it, it's not that big of a deal. All right? There's a lot of other things in this world to be worried about. Just be thankful that you're healthy. your loved ones are healthy, and then you have a good life. That's what you got to do. Look at the good things, okay? Don't sweat the small stuff, okay? Because the Super Bowl halftime show, even though it's a part of a big event, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal, okay? It's not. Let's focus on things that are more important, okay? So that's all I have to say when it comes to, and I'm not trying to make a political statement, anything like that. No. Again, I didn't know any of his songs. Well, I was familiar, but not too familiar. But again, I'm just there to watch the game. That's it. And I really couldn't tell you anything about the commercials. None of the, really, I think to me, my favorite commercial was the Duncan commercial. That was the only one that stuck out to me. Other than that, couldn't tell you any. There was the singing toilet seats. Commercials to me were not memorable at all. So, and it's amazing how a lot of people with that Duncan commercial, like I go on social media, everyone's talking about AI, CGI. Did we forget that exists? That's how they de-aged all these actors. And that was a commercial that reminded me, like, okay, I gotta watch some of these shows when I get around to them, as well. All right, so that was my halftime show spiel, commercial spiel, if you want to call it. Just really, to make it short, again, the cliche, don't sweat the small stuff. It's okay. It's okay. You have the power to turn off the TV or change the channel. We don't have to go crazy over it. We don't. But it doesn't really matter. I hope it reaches someone and they say, you know what, you're right. Not my cup of tea. Who cares? Can do other things. You know, whatever. All right, so that's pretty much it, everybody. Seattle wins 29-13. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video, to the channel. Make sure to follow us on the social media platforms in the description below. And wherever you get your podcast, you can follow us as well. Just look up Infinite Sports, and you'll find us there. And as always, everybody, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off. Have a good one, and I will talk to you guys next time. Take care.